welcome everybody out there with another edition of Working Together. Bishop Ronnie Crudup, Senior Pastor of New Horizon Church International here in the Diocese, Bishop for the Fellowship of International Churches, representing Working Together Jackson and Working Together Mississippi. And hello to everybody out there, wherever in the world you are watching from. We appreciate you because, listen, we know that you got choice and you're here with us today. And so thank you so much to be here for this Working Together program. And I've got my good friend and brother, church member, and really brother, the one and only, Socrates Garrett is in with me today, sitting in with me. And so, Soc, welcome to Working Together.
Bishop, it's always good to be in your presence, you know, whether it's Working Together Jackson or whether it's Working Together Mississippi or whether it's New Horizon Church or whether it's following you around the country, wherever you're going. It's always good to be in your presence.
Well, I tell you, man, no more than a joy to be in your presence. So thank you. And it was great. Of course, we've got the program now here, and I was coming myself, and I said, I got to get with Sock, you know, if I got to stop by his office, but to have you in and helping me today, because it's kind of just me today.
Right.
You know, and this is even more an added treat. So thank you for doing this.
Okay. Glad to be here.
Well, great. Well, this is the program for Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi. So we want to talk about some of those issues, even though we can talk about a whole lot of other issues, you know, and you and I talk about stuff, you know, all the time because we always saving the world from something.
Putting up a good fight.
Oh, yeah, we're putting up a good fight.
Right,
so
right.
That's what it's all about. But, you know, I want to let people that's viewing know that that Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi can be a tremendous resource for them. And, of course, Working Together Jackson and Working Together Mississippi, and we push both of them for the fact that if you're in Jackson or the Jackson area, then more than likely you want to be a part of Working Together Jackson. But it's now a statewide organization as well, and that is the Working Together Mississippi that deals with things outside of Jackson, Mississippi. That, you know, this thing is also an opportunity, a resource for people, for institutions that would be a member of this. Because, once again, people get involved in Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi as a member organization. And so as a good example, New Horizon Church International is a member of Working Together Jackson. The Fellowship of International Churches is a member of Working Together Mississippi because we got churches all across Mississippi. And this organization is a resource for us to help us accomplish those ends that we have, to help us meet the need that we have, to help us deal with our felt needs. And in community organizing, what we tell folk is that we're looking for people who have a need. Okay, we're not looking for folk who want to be benevolent necessarily, but we're looking for people who they've also got something they want to, you know, they want to happen, to see accomplished. And so they come with their need just like everybody else comes with their need. And because all of those folks come with something common, a need. Now, the need is going to be different in every circumstance, but we all got needs. We can formulate an agenda around that so that, in a nice way, everybody's need is met. And we also can ensure that people are going to stay at the table because you aren't here doing me a favor. You're getting something in the midst of this as well. So we can barter, you know, we can discuss, we can make plans to do things that's going to help everybody.
Wow. Interesting organization. You know, we live in a city that's predominantly African American, about 80 to 85% black. Tell me a little bit about your racial makeup of Working Together Jackson.
Well, the great thing about Working Together Jackson, same for Working Together Mississippi, is it is the most diverse thing in the state of Mississippi, certainly in Jackson. Diversity in terms of certainly race, okay? It's black, white, as well as there are Latin folks involved in this, Asian people. certainly we've got a diversity in terms of religious affiliation. There are Muslims involved in this. There are Jews involved in this. Certainly there are Christians and Christians of every stripe that's involved in this. There are people who are no faith, okay, that's involved in this as well. And so we got a pretty significant diversity, which is a strength. I mean, we see that as a real strength to be able to do what we do, because you can't you can't block us out. That if we were just black, you say, well, hey, this or that, because there is so much diversity here. And so in terms of percentage of that, I would think that in Jackson, no doubt, the majority of members would be black. But we've got probably closer to 40% of the folks and organizations that's involved would be white as well.
Wow. My good friend Nettie Winters is head of an organization called Mission Mississippi.
Right.
And you're chairing Working Together Jackson. How does those two organizations operate in the same space?
Well, first, we support Mission Mississippi, and I'm a founding member of Mission Mississippi, and New Horizon Church is a member of Mission Mississippi and supports that organization on a monthly basis. I'd like to tell folks that Mission Mississippi kind of is one of those foundation builders for all these other things we do, and so I give it credit because the work of Mission Mississippi made it easier to actually work in the diverse, circumstance here, because it caused us to talk more, okay? Because at one point, you didn't have black and white folks working much together, because once again, not just talking about going to somebody's job. Now, we always had, black folks that was working at some white company's job, but we never had a level of fellowship and partnership, use that word even better, that's going on to address issues, okay? Mission Mississippi is not a part of Working Together Jackson, and we understood that from the very beginning, because Mission Mississippi's mission is actually a work of Christian organizations. It brings together black and white Christians and Christians of various stripes together, but it is exclusively Christian.
Okay.
And it was started that way because we didn't have no harmony among folk that named Christ. Okay? I mean, listen, no less trying to get some level of agreement to work with Muslims and Jews. We couldn't get along with the Christians.
Okay.
And so that's how that started. And at this point, that is still their mission. Now, we talk to Nettie all the time. We talk about this, Nettie's office and all of that. And so certainly not down on Mission Mississippi, but that's their mission. And as they do their mission well, we get affected in a positive way because it helps us. It's laid the groundwork to be able to deal with one another, not only on the racial issue, but then Working Together Jackson does deal with race, but it also deals with all of these other things, with economics and all these other things that need to be dealt with.
And so you brought up an interesting name, Dolphus Weary. I when I think of Dolphus, I think of John Perkins for some reason.
Disciple of John Perkins.
He's a disciple of John Perkins, and that's Voice of Calvary. So Voice of Calvary is another entity in this space?
So John Perkins started Voice of Calvary, and of course under that umbrella is Voice of Calvary Mendenhall Ministries in the state of Mississippi. He did a lot of things in California and other places. Most folks don't know how big John Perkins is out there, okay? Because the prophet has honor everywhere but at home, But John is huge, and of course, and just to let folks know, of course, John's a member of New Horizon, okay? So we see him a lot, and he will be preaching again on Father's Day. He does that annually, so we're looking forward to that. But one of the young men that came up under him and he nurtured, okay, to be a leader, and he became a significant leader in his own right, was Dolphus Weary. And of course, Dolphus headed up Mendenhall Ministries and one time Voice of Calvary because they're kind of the same. But once Boys and Cavalry came to Jackson, they kind of separated the names. And of course, he led Mission, Mississippi. He was the second leader of Mission, Mississippi. And so probably the one that most folks knows that name more than anybody else.
Well, I certainly know the name. I went to Pineywood School, so I spent a lot of time down in Mendenhall, right, Mississippi, and so I could feel the presence of John Perkins even when I was down there in school. And you say the world doesn't really know how large a person he is. Explain that to me a little bit in terms of what are we missing?
Well, you know, John's footprint of the things that he has done is so significant. And I think the great thing about John is in his humbleness is he didn't necessarily try to be this great figure, but he became this great figure. I mean, John is the father of what is called Christian community development. And so there are organizations all across this country and the world who ascribe, once again, to that tenet, okay, that thought. And they all look at John as the father of that. They associate, okay, out of that. And so there are universities that has a part of a study department named after John Perkins.
Wow.
I mean, and so this is huge. I mean, John gets the royal treatment when he goes other places in the country. You know, here he's just another fella.
Right,
you know,
right.
Around here, some old man.
Right.
And John is 92, something like that now.
Wow.
You know.
Wow.
But, and his story, I mean, come on. John Perkins, one of John's books, and people need to understand, John went to the 3rd grade.
Wow.
He's got all these honorary doctorates from all these places. But he only went to the 3rd grade. But one of John's books was voted one of the top 50 books written in the last 100 years.
Wow.
In Christendom. Not just among black folk. This is white folk. This is everybody. When your book makes the top 100 in the last 100 years, top 50, that's, as we would say, that's high cotton.
That's high cotton. That's high cotton.
Real high cotton.
And he's a member of New Horizon Church.
He's a member of New Horizon
Why Church. Would an individual with that status and that you've just articulated, why is he a member of New Horizon Church?
And will come and sit in the chair. Don't sit in the pulpit. Sit in a chair. Only time he comes to the pulpit generally is when he's preaching or some special guy that gets invited up. Otherwise, he's going to sit out there in the chair. We don't use pews, so he's going to sit in the chair. As John told me, because we had a long conversation, because John's my mentor too. He said, first, everybody needs to be a part of something, right? You need to be a part of something. You need to be faithful to something that is not your deal. And he said, then I need to be ministered to as well. I need a pastor. And so that's
regardless,
the rationale. So,
regardless of who you are, you need to be ministered to.
That's right. It's kind of like your statement. You know, what is that? How many numbers? There's certain things you need. You need a good pastor. You need a good lawyer. You need an accountant. You know that
and
thing.
A good doctor.
Yeah, a good doctor.
That's
yeah.
right. That's right.
You tell folks all that. So for those folks that don't have all of those number of things, okay, make sure you get it.
You got to have that support group. Now, tell us a little bit about the organization and who heads the organization of Working Together Jackson. And is it a national organization or is it local just to Mississippi?
No, Working Together Jackson is a part of the Industrial Area Foundation. It's community organizing. Industrial Area Foundation is one of the historic large community organizing groups in this country. It's not the only one. There are some others. But it's the one that helped train President Obama, because remember, he was an organizer.
Okay.
He was not actually working for one of the organizations that was a part of the IAF, but he came to the IAF and got the training for it, because the IAF does some world-class training in terms of community organizing. And so it has affiliates across the country and the world, for that matter, and one of those affiliates is in Jackson, Mississippi, and now Mississippi as a whole. And the organization actually came here in 1992. And so a number of us invited the organization here in 92. And as it goes, those things gets rebranded. The first organization was branded the Amos Network. Some folks back there would remember that.
Okay.
And we rebranded it, now Working Together Jackson.
Wow. And your state director is Perry?
So Perry Perkins is the state director. We use that word, organizer, supervisory organizer. The person who heads up Working Together Jackson is Siobhan Chapman.
Siobhan.
Yeah, Siobhan.
I saw her on one of your shows.
Right, yeah.
She's an attorney, I believe?
She's an attorney by training, and sharp cookie.
She is very, very sharp. Right. I don't know how y'all were able to get a person of that talent to be in that position. Well, y'all must pay well.
I think it's a kind of a calling, and then we pay well.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we're not trying to do that preacher humor. We're not trying to get starving preachers involved in these kind of organizations.
Good. I know that you've done work all over this country, and the TELUS Group is one of the organizations that I know you've been involved with, and I think you've spent some time in the Middle East.
Yeah, spent some time in the Middle East. Hope to be back in the Middle East later on. Scheduled to go to the Middle East. With the volatility sometime in the Middle East, you never know. But I'm scheduled to go back to Israel, Palestine later this year.
As a young boy growing up in Jackson, Mississippi, coming from humble beginnings, how do you get to be going to Palestine and Israel? How do you navigate that journey? That's a bit unimaginable.
That's that John Perkins influence.
Okay.
Again, I mean, I'm gonna give John some credit. You end up, extending your own boundaries. You see yourself as larger than just the circumstance that you came from. You operate with that kind of mindset, and God can open doors for you. And so, and things happen. And so I was invited, to look at the TELUS Group that I actually end up, now I'm on the board of that group, and to look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and to ask the question, is there a place for African Americans involved in that? And so, and we determined that there is, because there are a lot of parallels in the experience between Palestinians and Israelis, that uses the history of the black civil rights struggle in terms of that. And so that's how I initially end up getting involved in that. And I'm going to invoke a name of somebody who's gone on to heaven now, but Leland Speed actually was the person that kind of actually asked me that question and kind of made it possible for me to meet these folks. And so you say, well, why in the world, for those who know who Leland Speed was, that Leland was a tremendous business guy in Jackson, Mississippi. Well, what I think but a lot of people out there may not know, is that Leland owned two companies that were Fortune 500 companies at one point, and they did rental buildings and stuff. Leland owned property all over the world, in major places, and because of that, he ended up brushing shoulders with all kind of folk. And a lot of his business partners also were Palestinians or Arabs, And of course, you can't have conversations with these people alone without Israel-Palestine coming up. And folks want to say, what's the solution? Is there anything that could be done?
Well, that's a good question. Is there anything that can be done? Bishop, with all of the focus that you're involved in, and all of the groups and the organizations, and especially with a good faith Christian-based organization, how do you account for the tragedy and the hatred that was displayed in Buffalo?
Yeah, it's Boy, I actually put something on my Twitter account about that earlier, and I want to encourage people to go out there and find it under Ronnie Crudup, a post that I did, and particularly directed to, quote, Christians, okay? But I said this at first. Buffalo is a message to all Americans, and certainly a message to everybody all over the world. Because the force, the insidious, demonic-led force that was behind Buffalo, that issue, replacement theory, racism, that's affecting the world. Because of demographics, white people are losing out all over the world. It's imagined now probably somewhere around 35 to 40, white people will no longer be the largest group in this country. They will become a minority. That's going to affect all of us. That young man, who did this awful, awful thing, once again had been radicalized, okay, and became a terrorist. Let's call it what it is, a domestic terrorist, because he saw African Americans, but he saw Jews, he saw other folks as his enemies that was replacing him. And the web now, the World Wide Web, all of these things gives people an opportunity to espouse their doctrine, whether that's venom or something good. And so we got to deal with this kind of stuff. But I appreciate that question, because we, to be able to bring solutions to things, because we're here today, and I'm advocating to folks that if you are interested in solutions, then you need to be a part of organizations like Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi, because we're not gripe session groups. Mm-hmm. Okay? We're solution-oriented groups. We talk about how can you really make change. I love this. I preach it all the time. You know this.
Well, let me ask you
got to have power, right? Power is the ability to make change. If you can't change, then you ain't got no power.
Let me ask you this. Does an incident like that make it harder for organizations like Working Together? Will it force blacks and whites to separate from one another because of an incident like that? Or does it bring the organization members closer together to fight off such a hideous act?
Both.
It can do both.
Well, it can do both. So we got a conversation tomorrow. We're going to be engaging some of this tomorrow around this with leaders across the state, having this very conversation, because Working Together Jackson and Working Together Mississippi, the big, even though we got a lot of diverse memberships, and you can be a neighborhood association, you can be the medical mall as a member, but a lot of the groups are faith groups. Then if you got a white congregation over here, then, because honestly at this point most of those shooters come out of white congregations, right? Then some of their people are espousing that doctrine. That thesis is what it's where they live. And so we're talking, because we got to talk and say, you got to address this. How do you best address this? Let's talk to leaders, because so goes leadership, so goes everything else, because everything's about leadership, to make sure that they themselves too sometimes, are not sympathetic, right? Mm-hmm. Come on. White people in this country are going to have to make a choice. If you're white in this country, you got to make a choice of whether or not you're going to fall into hate, because that's hatred, mm-hmm. or are you going to take a higher place?
Well, Bishop, it's such a difficult challenge, especially in Mississippi, because of our history, and because of the fact that we're so poor in many ways, but because we are so diverse. 40% of the state of Mississippi is African American. And so clearly we don't want that kind of divide in the states that's so heavily populated with African Americans. It could lead to something really, really bad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And let me say this, and this was my post, so I won't say this, and I hope people will start following me on Twitter. Okay, I got that in. Okay. I said, particular to, quote, Christian, because everybody in Mississippi is a Christian, right? We go to church, right?
Right.
I said, if you're a black Christian, then you can't seek revenge.
Wow.
I said, if you're a white Christian and you feel like you're being replaced, you can't hate.
Wow.
The Bible says, vengeance belongs to the Lord. He will repay.
Wow.
You may feel like you want to repay, okay? The scripture says that hatred should not be named among the Christian faith. It's not synonymous. You can't walk with Jesus and hate your brother, okay? And so white people got to make a decision. Black folks got to make a decision, okay? Wow. Who are we going to follow in the midst of this? Because this thing, where this country is headed, so we're talking about where this country is headed now. Once again, you cannot escape. If you live in America and the white influence is going to be decreasing in this country, you're not going to be able to escape it, okay? Because everything in this country is about numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Government services, everything else comes around to numbers. And so when you look at now CRT laws, all of this stuff, that is fueled by this very thing that these folk are losing out, and they don't want nobody to talk about history, anything, quote, derogatory. Come on, how awful is the history of this country, of what the white citizens in this country, not all of them, but their folk did to the Native American, not just black folk. Now you enslaved us and built a country on our back, okay? And so that's part of that. What's happening down there on the border, what you're doing to the Hispanic Latin guy, right? Put a fence up and all these things against him, call them all rapists and all of these things. That's the same thing. It's all the same thing, okay? Because you don't want these people, because you understand numbers. Because eventually, who's going to be the number one group in this country? Hispanics.
Really?
Yeah.
Now,
so
when you say
going to be the number one guy, number-wise, in this country.
What, do you have any Hispanic members and working together to start?
I'm working on them, Sock. I'm working hard. I was talking to some folk about this last week, okay? Come on, we got to learn some Spanish, brother. We all going to learn some Spanish here.
Yeah.
So that Hispanic guy is going to be the number one guy ethnically in this country. The guy that's going to be the second is going to be that Asian guy.
When you say this country, Bishop, you're speaking of America.
I'm talking about the United States.
The United States of America.
Absolutely.
Because in the world population, I believe that it breaks out where there are more Asians in the world than any other ethnic group. And then I think 1 billion plus Asians, and then 1 billion Indians, and I'm talking about the ones with the dot, not the feather.
The Hindus and all those folks, right?
Right, they're number 2, and then African Americans in at 700 million, 800 million, or something like that. And then
black folks,
not African American, but black folks. Right. And then you get to Caucasians or Europeans,
right.
And so they've always been a minority in the world.
That's absolutely right. But they've dominated America and Europe, right? And they've dominated South Africa for years. So a little microcosm of that has already taken place. in South Africa, because I do a lot of work there too. But you got Australia, you got these places where they still dominate, and part of the thesis is, because that's part of this issue, those are the most advanced areas, right? When you talk about development, where that white man, stuck his feet down into the dirt, okay? His societies has the most technological advancements, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which, for them, is a part of this thesis, this ugly thesis, in a sense, that he is more advanced mentally and all these other things like that than us, right? He's more civilized than us, okay? I was in Africa one time, and we were all talking mixed, diverse groups, and the issue was, why didn't Africans, develop high rises, multi-story buildings? Okay?
I wonder about that as well.
Right. And so, so it's a part of this bigger thesis that we don't have the mental capacity to rule. Of course, we don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
That's right. But I'm just saying that's a part of this superiority thing. When you talk about white superiority, that's in it, because white superiority creates what? Racism. This kind of hatred. It created CRT. It created replacement theory. It's what the Aryan nation ascribes to. It's what the Proud Boys ascribes to.
Wow.
And so it all comes from the same place. And for me, it comes from the pit of hell.
Well, we're going to have to go to a station break. We've had a great dialogue with Working Together, and we're getting ready to break for a moment, but we appreciate them being in the studio here with WeBelieveDigital.com. We're being seen on Facebook and on YouTube and on Roku TV. We've been seen all over the world in 139 countries, even in Israel and in Palestine and places like that. And so we're grateful to have Bishop Ronnie Crudup in our studios today, and along with all of the great work that they're doing and Working Together. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break.
SGECOVIDsolutions.com is paving the way forward for a safer city government, delivering cutting-edge biosecurity and biosafety protocols developed internationally by top virologists and scientists using an all-natural cleaning solution, killing COVID-19 on contact like no other product on the international market. For more information, please call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com. Let SGECOVIDsolutions.com provide innovative rapid facilities testing and world-class state-of-the-art biorisk safety protocols for all of your coronavirus needs. Call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com.
We're back here with Working Together, which is a program of Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi. I'm here, Bishop Ronnie Crudup of New Horizon Church, along with the illustrious one and only, my friend, Socrates Garrett. And so we're having a conversation around why every church that's viewing this, pastor that's viewing it, member of a church, and other organizations ought to be a part of Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi. If you need a good resource that's solution-oriented, if you want to be a part of bringing solutions to community issues, from racism to, community development, all of these kind of things like that, then we're the folk, right? I mean, as a part of that. And so that's what it's all about.
Bishop, I know Working Together Jackson has several bishops involved in the organization. I'm not sure I understand what the title bishop means. There's a pastor. I mean, what does bishop mean?
It means a lot more grief. Well, I mean, it's a title. It means, in a sense, that you cover territory. A pastor is his parish is a congregation. Okay, a bishop's parish is multiple congregations. Okay. And so typically bishops would cover, like I cover the state of Mississippi. Okay, I actually go some into Louisiana and other places, Alabama. Working on churches in other states as well. So when you talk about Glake Hill, Bishop Glake Hill, Church of Christ Holiness USA, then he is the bishop, for the state of Mississippi in his group. When you talk about Bishop Daniel Lillerton, Church of God in Christ, then he is the bishop, in a territory as well, state of Mississippi. You talk about Bishop Wicker, okay, who is the AME bishop, okay, then he covers Mississippi and Louisiana, okay. And so, I mean, we can go on. You talk about, the CME bishop, and so, same thing, okay.
Now, what's the difference in Southern Baptists? Are they called bishops over there?
No, so Baptists would have presidents, and so as a good example, Jerry Young, Dr. Jerry Young, is the national president. So, he's the top person. Sometimes you would use the word presiding. So he would be equivalent to the presiding prelate. Okay, folk would use that at the Church of God in Christ level. Okay, so so there are people at that level for the national, but then you would have the state person, which would be president, which would be Reginald Buckley, okay, at Cade Chapel. So he's the state guy. And so I would be equivalent to Reginald in that sense, okay?
Okay.
Glake Hill, Lillerton, all of those folks, these bishops we talked about and others would be equivalent to Reginald Buckley.
Now,
who got there, and of course in their system, you get that by vote. A number of those, you get that by vote.
So these are black Christian organizations, but
same thing among the Southern Baptists. So Southern Baptists are predominantly white, but they would have a state president, okay, and then they would have the national person. That's how.
So let me help me understand. So there's Jerry Young is president over Southern Baptists.
No, Jerry Young is president of the National Baptist, which would be black. Predominantly black, right.
And there is a president over the predominantly white Baptists.
Right. So in the state, Sean Parker, Dr. Sean Parker, is the state president, okay, for the Southern Baptists.
Do these organizations come together and have like a national convention of just...
No. So thankfully, there is some conversation there. We progressed to the place, thankfully, that there is conversation between us, okay? And we're trying to do that even better. We need to do that better. But there is no national thing where we all come together, around that, because we haven't seen a need for that, right?
Well, I think we're seeing a need.
Well, I think part of the conversation while we're talking more is because the need, I need my brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because if we name Christ, then we're brothers. And so we need to talk. Because the truth is, a lot of our problems are the same thing, okay? Now, we differ on some issues, okay? There's some significant differences on some issues.
Well, I understand there's significant difference between Catholics and Protestants, but I don't understand the significant difference between white Baptists and black Baptists.
Significant difference, frankly, is race.
Race.
It's culture, right? I mean, because whiteness or blackness, affects everything. So, so we would say, well, he's a black Christian, he's a white Christian. That's technically, in terms of grammatically, that's wrong. Because black or white is actually the adjective and not the noun.
Okay.
So that tells you the source of our problem. We made what should be an adjective the noun, right? We made white or black superior to Christian. It should be a Christian that happens to be black or a Christian that happens to be white.
Wow.
And so even our grammar, because of how pervasive the issue of race is in this country, messes us up in everything.
Well, Bishop, I don't get a chance to have this dialogue with you because you're really busy on Sundays, but there's other institutions out here. There are Muslims out here, and there are Hindus, and there are people of different faiths out here. And how do you view those?
So Working Together Jackson has Muslim members.
Okay.
So Master G. Muhammad is a member organization. We don't have any Hindus, but we want them.
Okay.
Okay, because first we need people to talk. So it's in our interest, self-interest. We talk a lot about self-interest in this business, okay, and organizing business. Self-interest doesn't have to be selfish interest.
Mm-hmm.
It is in our interest to talk to one another because there are some things happening in other places in the world we don't want to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you talked about India, so there are 1 billion folk in India, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in India, Hindus are the top group,
mm-hmm.
and they inflict punishment on Muslim groups and show enough on Christian groups.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
And so we don't see that here as much because their numbers are small. But we recognize that influence though could come here. And so we need to talk to one another. We need
Bishop,
to value one another because let me bring this up.
Yeah.
Last week or early in the week, whenever it was, you had that church, that Presbyterian church in California that you had that shooting in.
Right.
So, who did the shooting?
I don't know.
So, the person that did the shooting was a Chinese national.
Really?
He was a Chinese national who had a problem over Taiwan. He felt like Taiwan is getting too much attention, and so he drove from San Diego number of hours and came to a Taiwanese Presbyterian church. He didn't know them people, but he shot those folks there. Now I tend to think that's it ain't just a terrorist act. I think Chinese government probably put that up, but that's Ronnie Crudup's fault, right? But you see how these kind of things can happen, okay? And so I mean, people start blowing stuff up. Everybody's got issues, right? Out there, y'all ain't treating me right. All these things. So we have a need, all of us, to talk about everybody's humanness, right? I value your life, you value my life, and let's help work towards everybody's life being valued. Now, on a micro side of that, we got an issue in Jackson, Mississippi, because a lot of our children don't care for their own lives and nobody else's lives, and so they shoot and kill one another, right? We need to stop that too, okay? And so Working Together Jackson, Working Together Mississippi is a part of that effort to address issues like that, because New Horizon Church International is a big church, but we can't take that on by ourselves. We got to work with other people. And so we're inviting other churches and other groups. Let's work together to address our common needs.
Wow.
Now, sometimes the common need is a street. That street got a lot of potholes in it, okay? The city's not addressing that problem. We may need to put a little pressure on the city about that, right? whatever the issue is. We deal with the impediments, whatever they are. And so as people come together, because community organizing is about organizing people and organizing money, because it also costs something to do everything that we do.
Wow. You bring up the city of Jackson, and normally churches don't get involved in politics or what's going on in the government. I see a lot of politicians come into churches seeking favor, but I don't see a lot of churches dictating to politicians as to what they think is wrong and right with what's going on.
Because we haven't been taught. Nobody has helped us understand our place. Okay? So we're woefully ignorant of reciprocation. If you come to me and ask for my vote, then what's the reciprocation? Mm-hmm. If I vote for you, in a nice way, you're indebted to me. Mm-hmm. Okay? You're supposed to be representing me. Then I have a right to come to you and say, I don't agree with that vote you made about this or that. I have a right to hold you accountable. I have a right to come to you and say, by the way, we think something is not being addressed that need. Would you, on our behalf, address that issue?
How do you reconcile the separation of church and government? I mean, even back when Martin Luther got his head chopped off, I mean, the separation of powers there's always been a line that I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, separation of church and state is the line that's been created in the United States. I think the folks that created that understood the power potentially of the church, okay, or religious groups. But we clearly say that working together Jackson, working together Mississippi gives churches or any faith group a place where it can deal with the politics, okay, where it keeps a good line of understanding, okay, and not get, because what's everybody in church's fear is that we become overly political, right? We go because generally we don't swing to the middle. We swing the pendulum swings too far right or too far left. We don't have a balance. Working together Jackson, working together Mississippi tries to help congregations find that balance, because all of us are political. Mm-hmm. You better be, or your interests are not going to be taken seriously. You're not going to get your fair share of the resources. And so we teach people, what this is, how to do this, and so that we all get what we need.
Well, it's a tremendous need for that training.
Absolutely.
Because we're in a downward spiral, and somebody has to do something to stop the skid. And maybe organizations like Working Together, Jackson can do that. I noticed that you did have a presence at City Hall. The organization had a presence at City Hall during the garbage debacle, or the contract dispute. That's still ongoing.
Yeah, and we were there out of principle, and this is really important. Because I was talking to somebody earlier about the fact I don't have anything personal against anybody. No, in fact, there are some people that I'm on a different side with them about this that are my very good friends. I love them, but we're on different sides of this issue because that's America, so we can think differently about things. But for me, that was an issue of principle. Last year, Working Together Jackson did a big community meeting where we brought the mayor and the city council here because we wanted to demand, I use that word, we wanted to demand something different in terms of the percentage of contracts that go to African American businesses. Because you said earlier, this city is 80% black. So if this city is 80% black, how many contracts? What percentage of the contract is going? Well, you and I know that's dismal. And every African American in this city ought to be just livid, outraged, because that's why we poor, okay? So you got people from outside your community making all the money, and taking that money outside of Jackson, it doesn't have any.
Wow. When
we got all of this business that's going on here, it is still the largest, a metropolitan area in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So we were making that demand. about that. And so they put an RFP, request for proposals. The guy that won the request happened to be an African American, a guy by the name of Richards, who collects garbage in New Orleans and in Baton Rouge. Surely anybody who can collect garbage in New Orleans can collect garbage in Jackson, Mississippi. So if he won, job. We've got black council folk who oppose that. That ain't right. It ain't just right racially, okay? For me, you got a double deal. That's a double standard. And I can't totally figure it out because in the past, we were all advocating black folk ought to get some business. So a black contractor wins the bid and he can't get to work. That we now have an issue, he's doing the work, but now the issue is he going to get paid? Excuse me, the hell you say? In Jackson, Mississippi?
Bishop, it's been so great having you here in the studio today, and we really appreciate working together for being one of the programs that you see right here emanating out of this studio. Bishop,
Juneteenth is coming. June 17, 18, 19. Juneteenth is going to be on the hill up at New Horizon, okay?
Close us out,
everybody
Bishop.
come out. Everybody come be a part of Juneteenth because it's about celebrating us with black folks recognize their freedom. Working together. God bless your heart.
Do you have something to say? Do you want your voice heard? Join the We Believe Global lineup. Be the star of your own show. For more info, call 800-492-5186, option number 1, or visit online at